are you in for a treat today? Today's a banner day. It is Defecation Day. Well, at least part one. I can't do this in 15 minutes, so I got to split it up into two different parts. So let's get started so that we don't run out of time. Yes, I enjoy this. Just warning, we are going to have very frank, open discussions about the process of defecation. And in case you are wondering, in case you don't know what defecation is, that means pooping. So here we go. So let's say that you have just gotten done with dinner, and all of a sudden, you feel the need to defecate. Now, let me tell you a little story. That's why this takes a little bit longer. There aren't that many bullet points on the slides, but I have stories to tell. So when I was growing up, every day after dinner, my dad would magically disappear into the bathroom right away because, you know, he had to go, right? So, and he would magically reappear just about the time the kitchen was done getting cleaned up. And my mom would get really upset with him because he managed to get out of cleaning up the kitchen, which would like to point out that now he is like the cook and kitchen cleaner, so he's making up time. But it wasn't necessarily just that he didn't want to help clean up the kitchen. When you eat, when food goes into your stomach, that sends a message to your brain that says, we got to make room for more stuff coming through, so maybe we need to clean out the bottom end so as stuff comes down through the top end and gets down to the large intestine, there's going to be room for it there. So what happens is the brain sends a message back down to your large intestine that says, okay, let's clear it out. So something happens called a peristaltic wave. And this peristaltic wave, it's not like the wave you do in a stadium, but what it does is, we've already talked about it in the esophagus. When food gets squeezed from one part of the esophagus down, that's a peristaltic wave, and that will sweep food or feces, it's not food anymore because it's been digested as much as it's going to be, towards the rectum. And so for your viewing pleasure today, I have 3 different videos that show a peristaltic wave. Relax. You're not going to see any actual feces. You're not going to see any actual defecation. It's just to show you what a peristaltic wave looks like. The first one that I have here is actually not in the large intestine. It's actually in your esophagus, but it's very clear and you're looking at it from inside. So an endoscope, endo means inside and scope, you know, telescope, microscope, that type of thing. It's got a camera on it and a light, and you'll be able to see what a peristaltic wave looks like from the inside. There's no sound on any of these videos, but if you look here, let me get it bigger. Okay, so what you're seeing, you're looking straight down the esophagus, and you'll notice from the outside, that's a muscle contraction. And it is, anything that would be below that would now be getting pushed further and further down the esophagus. And the same sort of thing happens in the small intestine and in the large intestine. Oh, here comes another wave. This is why it's called a peristaltic wave. It even looks like the crest of a wave. So any food that would be below that then would get pushed down further down the tube. All right, so there's one of them. So let's go back to this, and now we can watch the second one. So these last 2 are live x-rays of food, and it's not in humans, it's in farm animals, but it shows the peristaltic wave. So here's the next one. All right. So if you notice right here, you can see the muscle contraction, and the food is going to be, let me get my laser. I don't have a laser here, but here's the muscle contraction. That's the peristaltic wave that's pushing food in this direction, and you'll see it if you watch down in this direction. You'll see little pieces of material getting pushed down through there. So this just continues over and over, and the food, the feces, continually gets pushed down through the tube to the next spot. Now this is, again, it's not large intestine, this is stomach. This is the sphincter valve at the juncture between the connection point between the stomach and the small intestine. So this is pyloric wave or peristalsis happening in between the stomach and the small intestine. All right, so let's look at one more. If I can get back to my screen. All right. So this is in the colon. And they are actually doing a little bit of setup here. So you're going to see some dye, some coloration is being inserted. That's what this tube is. So the peristaltic wave is pushing this mass of feces down through the coil, the colonic coil, the coil or the length of the large intestine, and you can follow it. So the peristaltic wave, the muscle contraction, is at the back end of this and pushing it through the coil further and further and further, and eventually it would end up, the feces would end up in the rectum. And again, it's not a simple, straightforward. You see there are bits and pieces left behind. They will eventually get pushed on to the next location along the way. But that's what peristalsis looks like. So after you eat a meal, your brain sends a message to your large intestine to make that happen so that the feces can get pushed towards the rectum. And once the rectum is full and you are in a socially appropriate location to defecate, this is not going to happen until the rectum is mostly full or getting full, but your brain senses that, okay, we've got feces that are moving towards the rectum, now it's time to get rid of them. So when you're sitting on a toilet, and that's why I said it's got to be a socially appropriate moment in order for this to happen, you know how this goes. If any of you try to tell me that you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to look you straight in the face and point at you and say you're a liar, because every single one of us knows what this is like. You're sitting on the toilet, you take in that deep breath and you hold it, and the reason you're doing that is so that you can tense your abdominal muscles. That puts some pressure on the large intestine, because that peristaltic wave that's squeezing feces towards the rectum, that's great. But oftentimes, you need a little bit of help getting those feces all the way into the rectum. So put a little pressure from the outside using those abdominal muscles. Well, that will also help to force the feces into the rectum. Now, we all know that there are some times that you go into the bathroom and you don't have to do anything. It's like you sit down and whoosh, there they go. But there are other times when you have to work at it. And that would be when you're using your abdominal muscles to help push those feces into the rectum. Ooh, just like that. So once the rectum is full, back when we first talked about sphincters, when we were talking about muscles, remember, sphincters are circular muscles that open and close an opening. I told you back then that if you have ever heard of sphincter muscles before, chances are it would be the anal sphincters that you've heard about. Well, guess what? You don't have just one anal sphincter, you have two anal sphincters, and they surround each other like this. There's an internal anal sphincter, and then there's an external anal sphincter that goes around the internal anal sphincter. And here's the really fun thing about this. Your external anal sphincter is under voluntary control, which means that you have the ability to make it open and close, like that. The internal anal sphincter, though, you do not have control over. So once the rectum is full, your internal anal sphincter tries to start opening up like this. The internal anal sphincter wants to open. But it's not always a socially appropriate moment to do that. So your external anal sphincter comes around the outside. So your internal anal sphincter is trying to open. Your external anal sphincter is saying, no, no, it's not a good time. And so there's a little war going on between the inner one trying to open and the outer one trying to keep it closed. And I'm sure you've all experienced that before. And you know where you're walking down the hallway because you got to go and you're like squeezing your butt cheeks and you're like, you know, really trying to just waddle your way down to the bathroom because you're using your gluteal muscles to help your external anal sphincter keep the internal anal sphincter closed because you don't want the internal anal sphincter to open because that's when the feces come out. And that would be awkward, especially if you're in the middle of the hallway or in the middle of class. So internal anal sphincter, involuntary control. That's how you can remember it. They both start with I. External anal sphincter, you have control over. And that's what potty training a child, a toddler, is all about, is helping them learn how to pay attention to their external anal sphincter and control it. So the next time that you are around a cousin or a niece or a nephew that's in that wonderful potty training age, or if you ever have children of your own and you're doing that, just keep in mind, you're just teaching them how to use their external anal sphincter. Teaching a child how to pee in the potty is a lot easier than teaching them how to poop in the potty. Just going to give you a fair warning on that. All right, so once both of those sphincters are open, socially appropriate moment, both sphincters are open, those peristaltic waves get stronger. Sometimes, though, you still need to give a little extra push. So this is where you like bend over, and if you ever hear somebody like grunting in the next stall at school like that, and yes, there are facial expressions that go along with that. This would be the time because those peristaltic waves are strengthening. You're bending over because you really got to work to get it out. The diaphragm pushes down, your abdominal muscles contract more, you're really getting into it because somehow that helps. But eventually, the feces will be forced out and it will be a plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. Or maybe it should be plop, plop, splash, splash, oh, what a relief it is. So, you know, that splashback, always a little awkward, but there you go. Well, that's the process of defecation. It's all about the muscles. It's all about filling the rectum, getting those sphincters to relax, using the muscles to your best advantage. Tomorrow, what we're going to do live and in person is we're going to talk about some of the characteristics of feces, and I think that you'll enjoy doing that live. In the meantime, until then, I want you, the next time you go into the bathroom, probably after dinner tonight, I want you to be thinking about this. So until tomorrow, have fun.